Hello, my name is Jack. Welcome back to my vault. Tonight, I am not going to tell you about a government program or a war crime. I am going to tell you about a family, a mother, a father, 10 children, and a Christmas Eve that left 5 of those children simply gone. No bodies, no remains, no explanation. The fire chief planted fake evidence. The man who threatened to burn their house down ended up on the jury that called it an accident. And 23 years the photograph arrived in the mail. This is the Sodder children, and the vault is now open. To understand what happened, you need to understand who George Sodder was. An Italian immigrant who came to America at 13, built a coal trucking business in Fayetteville, West Virginia, and became one of the most respected men in his community. He was also outspoken about Mussolini. In October 1945, 2 months before the fire, that got him a visitor. A local insurance salesman came to the house. When George refused to buy a policy, the man left with a warning. His house would go up in smoke, and his children would be destroyed as punishment for his remarks about Mussolini. George dismissed it. Weeks later, a stranger visited, asking about hauling work, pointed to 2 fuse boxes, and said they would cause a fire someday. George had just had the wiring checked. It was safe. He dismissed that too. Then at 12:30 a.m. on Christmas Eve, the phone rang. A woman Jennie did not recognize asked for a person she had never heard of. Laughter and glasses clinking in the background. Wrong number. She hung up. Less than 30 minutes later, their house was on fire. Here's what happened between 1 and 8 a.m. on Christmas morning. George woke to smoke and flames. He and Jennie got out. 4 children got out. Then George went back. The staircase was burning. He ran to the side of the house where he kept the ladder permanently leaning against the wall. The ladder was gone. He ran to his coal trucks, both of which had run perfectly the day before. Neither would start. Marion ran to the nearest neighbor to call the fire department. The operator could not be reached. She tried another house. Same result. The fire station was finally reached from a phone in town. The fire department did not arrive until 8 a.m., 7 hours after the fire started. The official reason the fire chief could not drive the truck himself and had to wait for someone who could. George and Jennie waited in the cold for 7 hours, watching their house burn. When the fire department finally searched the rubble, they found nothing. No bones, no remains, not a single trace of 5 children who were supposed to have burned to death in that house. The Sodders began asking questions. The answers made everything worse. The phone line had been cut, not broken. Cut 14 feet above the ground, just 2 feet from the nearest telephone pole. That is not where a wire breaks on its own. The ladder was found thrown down an embankment 75 feet from the house. Both trucks failed simultaneously on the one night they were needed. A bus driver reported seeing people throwing balls of fire onto the Sodder roof from the road. And near the fire site, the family found a rubber object they believed resembled a napalm incendiary device. It was never officially tested. But the question remains, what was it doing there? 5 children, 1 night. Cut phone line, missing ladder, sabotage trucks, accelerant device, and a fire department that took 7 hours to arrive. The investigation that followed was, at best, negligent. The coroner's inquest was held the next day. 5 death certificates were issued for children whose remains had never been found. Cause of death listed as fire or suffocation. Among the jury members who declared the fire accidental was the insurance salesman who had threatened George 2 months earlier. The man who said the house would go up in smoke was now officially ruling it an accident. The family hired investigator C. Tinsley. He confirmed the salesman had been on the jury. Then he found something stranger. Fire Chief F.J. Maurice had privately admitted to finding what he thought was a human heart in the ashes and buried it in a dynamite box without telling anyone. When confronted, Maurice led them to the site. They dug it up. A funeral director examined it. It was beef liver. No signs of fire damage. It had never been in a fire. Someone had placed it in the ashes after the fact. Maurice later admitted he had done it to give the family closure and make them stop investigating. The Sodders did not stop. In 1949, they brought in a pathologist to excavate the fire site. He found 4 vertebrae fragments and sent them to the Smithsonian Institution. The report the bones belonged to one individual, aged 16 to 22. They showed no signs of fire damage. If those were the children's bones, they did not die in the fire. In 1952, the family erected a billboard along Route 16 with photographs of all 5 children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty, and offered $10,000 for information. The billboard stood for nearly 4 decades. George drove across the country, following every lead. He traveled to New York, Missouri, Texas, Florida. He once saw a ballet dancer in a magazine and believed it was his daughter Betty. He found the school, begged to see the girl, and she refused to meet him. Jennie stayed home, wore black every day for the rest of her life, and tended the memorial garden she had planted over the ruins of the house. In 1968, 23 years after the fire, Jennie received an envelope postmarked from Central City, Kentucky, no return address. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his mid-20s. On the back, someone had written, Louis Sodder. I love Brother Frankie. Illeel Boys, A90132 or 35. The family was certain it was Louis, grown up. The mention of Frankie made sense. Jennie's own brother was named Frankie. They hired another investigator and sent him to Kentucky. He took their money and vanished. They added the photograph to the billboard. George died in 1969. Jennie fenced off her property, added room after room to her house, and never left. She died in 1989. The last surviving Sodder child, Sylvia, just 3 years old on the night of the fire, died in 2021. She spent her entire life believing her siblings were out there. Nobody was ever charged. No investigation was ever reopened. The 5 Sodder children remain missing. The vault is now locked, but the next secret is already waiting. Subscribe to enter the vault. My name is Jack. Keep your eyes open.